Good morning. Good morning, traders. How are you all doing today? Karibuni sana. Glad you could all join us this fine Tuesday morning. Hope everyone is doing well today. So for those who are new, my name is Mitch Kanyari and I'm a trader with Afriforex. I want to welcome you to another Afriforex daily analysis session. During these sessions, we as a Afriforex team analyze the markets, we identify what trading opportunities we're looking at taking for the day, and we do share that information with you. So remember, if you do have any questions or queries, feel free to ask them on the chat box. The team will be there to respond to you. But I will also be looking to try and address any question or comment at the end of this session. So let's jump straight into it. Now, this week, or at least since Trump has been in office, the markets have been quite unpredictable. So let's just start off here with the news. So in terms of fundamentals, we did have, or at least we did have a number of fundamentals during the Asian session, which we have taken into account. But later on, there's not really much happening during the London session. You can see there's just a speech going to be happening at around midday. But then the next thing is for the US session, we only have some Canadian dollar fundamentals. So we do end up expecting volatility because we do not know how other countries are going to be reacting to Trump's tariffs. But we will be expecting to see what will happen there. So in terms of our watch list is pretty much the same as yesterday. You can see our bias. We will be still focusing on buying opportunities on the Swiss franc, the Japanese yen, as well as the euro, and looking to sell all the other pairs on the sell side. So that's the US dollar, Australian dollar, the New Zealand dollar, Canadian dollar, and the British pound. So we will be focusing on the exact same pairs that we did have yesterday. Since we will be looking at that, let's have a look at a few screenshots that we didn't manage to get before we end up focusing on today's pair. So starting off here, we have Alvin. Alvin, you did manage to end up sending us your screenshot. We're very happy to see you sending in this screenshot based on the fact that you did end up getting a few losses here and there based on the fact that you were looking for buying opportunities. Now, this wasn't a pair that we were looking at yesterday. Remember the fact that both the British pound and the US dollar were both on the same side, but it seemed that or at least the British pound was showing a lot more weakness than the US dollar. And remember, you can be able to follow the market structure. You can clearly see we are still making lower lows, lower highs. You can see the seller who pushed down was right there. So as long as you are holding below that level, it was still in a seller's market. And you can see the seller kept on pushing to the downside. Next thing, pushing to the downside. So it kept on pushing down lower. So you looking for the buys, it must have been better to look for the sells, to be honest. But I do end up hoping you learn from this. Also remember, even though we do have certain pairs that are both on the same side, you will find some of them are weaker in comparison to the other. So like yesterday, we had the British pound and the US dollar both on the same side, but the British pound, if you look across the board, did show a lot more weakness in comparison to the US dollar. But we do end up hoping you learn from that trade, and we end up hoping that you will send on more screenshots as well. But still, good job on this. You did look for buying opportunities within areas where they're buyers, which is a good thing. But you need to first make sure that the direction is the best, or at least you do know what the direction is. Because I know it's a concept we do end up teaching in terms of at least how any trader is going to look at the market. The first thing you need to know is the direction. The next thing you need to know is the timing. So when to actually enter. Then the next thing is the money management. So in terms of where you are looking for your buys, it was a good area within a buyer's area, but the only issue was the direction. If you get the direction wrong, everything else also goes out the window, even if you get the buys within buyer's area. But still, good job on this trade, Alvin. Keep sending in your screenshots as well. So also next we get Bravin. Bravin, no surprise here. You were looking for a trading opportunity on silver. Did you might grab a nice selling opportunity right there? We can see the price coming down in your favor. Not yet managed with your stop loss below your entry, but it is still a very good trade because you can see the trade is working in your direction. So very, very good job of this trade, Bravin. So also next we get George Chege. Now, George, you did manage to grab a selling opportunity on the British pound against the US dollar. Seems most of you wanted to trade the British pound against the US dollar, but since you did grab the selling opportunity within an area where the sellers, you can see the market within this particular location, how many times it probed within there before then the market came down. You can see there was even a pullback coming back to test that area. But still very, very good trade management with your stop loss already below your entry. And I can see also you have managed some of your trade rather than letting it all go all the way to your take profit. So still very, very good job. So just in case it did end up coming back, you still ended up making some money from this. So very well done for this trade, George, and keep up the good work that you're doing. remember, guys, if you manage to take any setups based on things that we do share here, feel free to send them into us, whether good or bad, like a similar situation. Alvin, you didn't end up sending that, but guaranteed you're going to learn a lot more from that trade in comparison to a trade that just worked. So still very, very good job, guys. So if you mind to take any setups, feel free to send them in to us. Our contact details are in the video description below. So let's focus on today's pairs. So we'll start off with the Swiss franc pairs, mix and match with the pairs on the sell side. Do the same thing with the Japanese yen, then move on to the euro before we have a look at the indices as well as gold and silver. So starting off with the US dollar against the Swiss franc. Now, yesterday, our bias was to look for selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that I had pointed out. Now, initially, when we were discussing this market early in the morning, the price looked as if it was attempting to break this area to the downside. I know I had pointed out this blue support and resistance area, saying that we need confirmation that that level has actually been broken, because you could end up finding some issues. Now, the market attempted to try and come down. You can see at around 10 o'clock, that's when the market started coming to the upside during the London session. You can see the price managed to come back all the way to this main support and resistance area that we did have. You can see the huge probe that did end up coming in. It's very clear here on the 15-minute, but I bet you if you go down lower to, let's say, the 3-minute time frame, you can see a similar situation. Once the price did spike to the upside and came back in, you can see the price confirmed that it was actually holding to the downside. So this was just after the New York Stock Exchange opened, but we can clearly see the trade still did end up holding within that particular area. And it is attempting to come to the downside right now. But overall, our bias here is still going to be looking for selling opportunities, still focusing on the same areas that we did have to look for the sells. So as long as we're holding below this red support and resistance area, our bias is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. We can clearly see this is definitely a very strong support and resistance area, and we do have this bias area down here at the bottom. Now, if you look at the market structure, we could potentially be entering some sort of ranging market due to the fact that the market is bouncing between these two levels. Now, that being the case, if you are looking for selling opportunities and we are within a range, then definitely you know the best place to look for your entry opportunity is back within the top of the range right there to look for your sells. But if you do find the price actually continue to go to the downside from here, remember, wait for a breach to the downside. Let's see if we can get the price holding below. If we do end up seeing that, we should be able to continue looking for selling opportunities here on the US dollar against the Swiss franc. So wait to see what ends up happening. But overall, the bias is definitely still to look for selling opportunities. Now, I know most of you will end up realizing that around 4:30 or so during the New York Stock Exchange, there was a big spike that ended up happening, giving a bit of strength to the US dollar. And you'll also see that on the stock exchange, or at least on the indices. But that was based on a specific rumor that people did think, or at least Wall Street did think, that Trump was actually going to give a 90-day 90-day period of when to actually implement these tariffs. But it seems that that was just a rumor. So the markets did react, but then they quickly corrected themselves. So here we have the Australian dollar against Swiss franc. Similar situation with the US dollar against Swiss franc, where initially the price was within this bias area early in the morning. So you can see at 10 o'clock during the London market open, we did start getting the pullback. As you can see, even based on the illustration I had pointed out here, you can see a very nice probe where the market attempted to break this area to the upside, could not actually break this area above. And you can see the price came down lower. Now, if you can clearly see today, our bias is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. This is a very good sign based on the fact that you can clearly see the sellers, or at least the price has come back within an area of interest. As remember, we keep on mentioning about probes. We always end up expecting the markets to actually, when they break that area, or at least probe an area, we expect the market to pull back to that area, and we do end up expecting some sort of reaction. So these sellers that have just come in do look a bit good, but you can clearly see we're within a small area where the buyers pushed up from. So could end up waiting to see what ends up happening here. If the sellers do end up really coming in, could potentially wait for this small buyer right here. So if I do zoom in slightly, you can see this is the buyer who's pushing. You can end up either waiting for the price to reach there or watching out for this particular buyer. So if the price ends up coming down very aggressive, ideally wait for potentially see maybe the buyers coming in slowly. The sellers come down aggressive, you might maybe get a pullback back towards that support and resistance area, or you could end up waiting. If we do get the price breaking this area to the downside and we get the pullback, we could end up seeing the price coming down lower. So wait to see what ends up happening here on the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. But remember, we'll also have a look at the other pairs. We'll try and figure out whether or not this is something to do with the Swiss franc or it has something to do with the Australian dollar. But hopefully this will end up giving us a very nice trading opportunity. So moving on to the next pair that we do have, Right here, we have the New Zealand dollar against Swiss franc. Yesterday, our buyers want to look for selling opportunities. It is still today, but you can clearly see from 10 o'clock, the market ended up giving us a pullback, came back within the support and resistance area. In this case, it does look as if it attempted to break this area to the upside before it came down lower. Now, we are starting to get a pullback, but you can clearly see the price did manage to break this area to the upside. So similar story actually with the Australian dollar against the Swiss franc. If you follow the story of where the buyers are pushing up from, you could potentially end up finding a very nice trading opportunity. So you can see right now, the buyers who are pushing up are right here. You can clearly see these are the buyers who are pushed to the upside. So hopefully we can end up getting these sellers coming down aggressive. We see the price holding below this area, then we could potentially end up looking for selling opportunities. Similar situation, you could end up either waiting, or if you miss that trading opportunity, you could end up waiting for once that level is broken to the downside, we could end up finding the price coming down lower. But for right now, we will still be patient, waiting to see how far the buyers can take this market. And hopefully we could end up finding the sellers coming back in. Because you can clearly see, we do end up having some sort of small support and resistance area. Within this area right here, it seems that that's where the market did bounce off from. So it's no surprise that the price is within that area, but these buyers will definitely give you issues if you do end up looking for your selling opportunity now. So do be a bit patient. We could end up waiting for some correlation to give us some more confidence to look for a trading opportunity here. So hope that is clear on the New Zealand dollar against Swiss franc as we move on to the next Swiss franc pair. So right here, we have the Canadian dollar against the Swiss franc. Similar situation, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities yesterday. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out. And yesterday, when we were discussing this market, the price looked as if it was breaking this area to the downside quite aggressively. But remember, we always mentioned, let's see if the price can actually hold to the downside. But you can clearly see this price came to the upside and it's actually holding above. So at that point in time, this was just a huge probe right there. And the market, you can clearly see, came back towards the main sellers area that we did end up having. Now, overall, the market did not necessarily move yesterday in terms of our selling opportunity, but it is starting to show a good sign, especially if you compare, these are the buyers who pushed to the upside. You can look at how strong they have pushed to the upside, managing to make a high of here, or at least within that particular area. The sellers came down a bit and the buyers next attempt. So these buyers that are pushing to the upside are these same buyers. And now you need to start to wonder, why are they coming in so slow? So this is definitely a good sign in terms of the buyers struggling. So the main thing we want to see now is aggressive sellers, which could potentially be coming in. But it's a similar situation. We'll still be focusing on the same areas to look for the sells. So aggressive sellers area right there. Right now, we do seem to be holding above this support and resistance area. So we're not going to look for the selling opportunities just yet. In order for you to potentially be safe, can end up watching out for where these buyers are pushing up from. You can clearly see the buyers have kept on pushing up within here. A similar story, if we can get the sellers coming down aggressively, you see the price holding below, you could potentially look for either a selling opportunity there, or you could end up waiting for more confirmation. So if the price is able to break this area to the downside and hold below, then we should be able to continue looking for selling opportunities here on the Canadian dollar against Swiss franc. But it is starting to look nice. You can see that aggressive seller, what is that candle that's coming in. Because remember, right now it is 9 o'clock, or at least 9 o'clock is the Frankfurt market open. So there is a session that has opened. So it's no surprise that you'll find sometimes the market start moving at 9, but you'll find the main move maybe at around 11 o'clock. Sorry, 10 o'clock once the London market does end up open. So hopefully the game plan is clear and what we're looking at doing on the Canadian dollar against Swiss franc as we move on to the next Swiss franc pair. So right here, we have the British pound against the Swiss franc. And yesterday, our bias was to look for selling opportunities. It is still the same situation today. You can see we have adjusted the area slightly, but yesterday we had this bottom area right here. So I'll put this blue support and resistance area in the level. So you can clearly see, we wanted to see whether or not the price is actually going to break this area to the downside and hold below. But you can see similar correlation with all these Swiss franc pairs. At 10 o'clock, we started getting the pullback. The price managed to get back within that main seller's area, managed to spike within that location before it did end up coming to the downside. So this was just around 5 or at least 30 minutes after the New York Stock Exchange opened, where you can clearly see the market did manage to come to the downside. So overall, the trade did work out. Might have been a bit tricky to get based on the fact that it came up quite aggressively. But overall, today, our bias is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. We've adjusted the level slightly because it's not necessarily such a big level. Wouldn't be confident to tell you guys to start looking for sells now when yet we know that there's a problem area right here. So that's the reason why we've adjusted the level slightly, still looking for selling opportunities. We have seen the British pound pairs are the ones that are showing the most weakness. So it's no surprise that this pair did end up coming to the downside. and it's not necessarily giving us that much of a pullback. So in this situation, we'll wait to see what ends up happening. Potentially, we can end up getting that pullback coming in because we are within an area where there are buyers. So if we do end up seeing the buyers coming in, we'll be looking for our selling opportunities higher up. But remember, we have also looked at the other Swiss franc pairs where they do look as if they're attempting to come to the downside. You can see these two red candles, at least these last two red candles, this is in the 15-minute. You can see that on all the other Canadian dollar pairs. You can see two red candles right there. Similar situation here with the New Zealand dollar against the Swiss franc. So you're definitely starting to see that there is something happening with the Swiss franc. So if we do end up seeing that strength coming in, it's no surprise that we could end up finding this market actually breaking this area to the downside. But remember, don't start jumping in on yourselves right there. Wait for a pullback. Wait for the price to actually hold below for us to look for selling opportunities. Similar situation to yesterday. If you not necessarily wait, it would have easily been stopped out on that trade. So do be patient. Patience is something that pays a lot in trading. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening here on the British pound against the Swiss franc. So hope that's clear on all the Swiss franc pairs. As you can see, we'll mix and match the Swiss franc with all the pairs on the sell side. So right now we're going to move on to the Japanese yen pairs and do the same thing. So we'll start off here with the US dollar against the Japanese yen. Now, yesterday, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. You can clearly see where we were initially in the morning, where within an area where there are buyers. So there was no trading opportunity at that point in time. You can see we're hoping to see if we could end up getting this pullback coming in within this first support resistance area. Did manage to get there, but it did end up breaking this area to the upside and holding above. So at that point in time, there was no trading opportunity just yet. Wanted to see what kind of reaction we did end up getting higher up. Now the price managed to get to the main seller's area. You can see the multiple probes that have come in. So potentially we could end up finding this market coming to the downside. You can see the price does still seem to be holding down below. So overall, we'll still be looking for selling opportunities on this pair. We are within an area where the sellers, which is definitely a good thing, but we will need to see the big boy sellers actually coming in. So in this situation, let's wait to see if we can maybe end up getting some other probe or price action signal, inciting more people to look for buying opportunities. We do end up seeing big boy sellers coming in, then we could potentially find this price coming to the downside. But remember, as I pointed out, and also with these other pairs, does seem like there's some small support and resistance area right there. So you could potentially end up waiting for the price to actually break this area to the downside. And if it does, you could potentially look for a sell. The only issue is the fact that you do have a problem area right in front of you. But if we are able to break that area to the downside, then technically we should be continuing to go down lower. But just do watch out for that. The best thing to do is always try and look for your selling opportunities as high up as possible, or at least as close to the sellers as possible, because that will minimize your stop loss. So hope the game plan is clear, and at least what we're looking at doing on the US dollar against the Japanese yen. As we look at the next yen pair we do have, so right here we have the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. Similar situation where our bias here is to look for selling opportunities. You can see yesterday the areas that you had pointed out, and initially as I was discussing this market, and started seeing the sellers coming down, but wasn't very convinced, because we did point out that there was a particular bias, or at least a support and resistance area right here, which I had pointed out yesterday. So expecting that the market could potentially react from there, and you can see that's exactly what happened. Price attempted to come to the upside. You can see how many times it broke and never actually broke and held above this area. So that was a good sign for us. But right now, it does seem as if the buyers are attempting to continue to go to the upside. But the good thing is how slowly they're coming in. But overall, we'll still be looking for selling opportunities. Obviously, the higher up the buyers go, the better it is for us, because that gives us more room to the downside for us to look for those selling opportunities. But for right now, since we are within this particular area, remember, watch out, as I pointed out on these other pairs, watch out for who the buyers are, or at least which buyers are the ones who are actually responsible for pushing the price to the upside. So you can clearly see right here, these are the buyers there. So you could potentially end up waiting for this price to actually come down. If you do end up seeing aggressive sellers, you can end up getting this price breaking and holding below this blue SNR right there. We do find the price holding below, then chances are we could end up getting a very nice selling opportunity here on the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. But for right now, since the buyers are still in control, let's wait to see how far they'll be able to push to the upside before we're able to look for those selling opportunities. So moving on to the next yen pair we do have. So right here, we have the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. Similar correlation with the Australian dollar against the yen, where earlier in the morning, you can clearly see the price was attempting to come to the downside, but we started getting a pullback coming in. You can see that was from 10 o'clock during the London market open. We got the pullback coming in. In this situation, it looks as if we managed to get all the way to the top area right there. Price managed to come to the downside, but it seems that it's not yet time for the big boy sellers to actually bring this price to the downside yet. So overall, we'll still be looking for selling opportunities. We'll wait to see how far these buyers are going to come in, because it is still a sign that the sellers are in control. Because if you look at the last time, where they compare the buyers and the sellers, so the buyers seem to be pushing up. You can't clearly see their push. Sorry, apologies for that. You can't clearly see their push within that particular area right there. It was quite aggressive. But right now, as the price has come down, and you can't clearly see the way the sellers came down, look at the way the buyers are coming to the upside quite slowly within that particular area. Yes, they've gained a bit of strength here at the end, but overall, the buyers do seem to be struggling to go to the upside. So overall, we wait to see what ends up happening here. Maybe the price can continue coming to the upside within this area. We do end up seeing signs of big boy sellers. We could potentially look for selling opportunities there, or you could easily find this price starting to come to the downside. So you can clearly see if we can get the price coming down lower and we see it holding below, we should be able to look for selling opportunities. Still watch out for this small buyers area, because these buyers will potentially still give you issues. You can see the last time the sellers came down very aggressive, but there were some small buyers right here. So potentially if we can get the price coming down lower, and we see less of a reaction, so the buyers even showing more weakness within that area, we could potentially look for some nice selling opportunities here on the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening here on the yen pair. We move on to the next yen pair that we do have. So right here we have the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. Now yesterday, this pair did end up actually falling off our watch list. The main reason for that is you can clearly see we had our red support and resistance area right there, but the price managed to continue going to the upside, managing to break that area above. Now, one of the main reasons why we're still seeing this, we're still expecting some Canadian dollar weakness, but due to the fact that many countries are retaliating through the US, Canada did end up giving their retaliation, at least they started retaliating yesterday, where they have, or at least placed a lot of tariffs. So they do seem to be fighting back, and that was some positivity for the Canadian dollar, and that's why you can see it going to the upside. But overall, we are still expecting weakness on this kind of pair. So the fact that we've not been able to break this area, so especially if I do go up to a higher time frame, to the 1 hour time frame, you can see we're still back within an area where the sellers overall, the sellers still push within that particular area. We're hoping to see this seller right here, but we are technically still within an area where the sellers. So the buyers struggle. It's also a good sign for us, because you can clearly see the way the buyers came up the first time to the upside, but right now it's a similar situation, and we have even got a very nice probe right there. So it does seem to be showing us some good signs right here. So hopefully we'll wait to see what ends up happening. You can clearly see these are the buyers right there that are pushing to the downside, or at least pushing above. So hopefully if we can get the sellers coming down aggressive, we see the buyers maybe struggling, could end up either looking for a selling opportunity there or waiting for a breach of this particular level. If we do see the price holding to the downside, then we should be able to continue looking for selling opportunities here on the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. But remember, if the price breaks and falls above the red SNR, remember this pair will fall off our watch list. So hope that's clear as we move on to the next and last yen pair that we do have. So right here, we have the British pound against the Japanese yen. Now, yesterday, our bias was to look for selling opportunities, but you can clearly see nothing much happened due to the fact that the price basically has maintained within these two levels right there. So nothing much happened. The price kept on probing within this area. At one point in time, it was to the downside. Then it managed to break this area to the upside and has kept on holding above. But you can clearly see we are still within this small sellers area right there. So overall, our bias is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. The main thing we're going to be waiting for is signs that the big boy buyers are actually going to, big boy sellers are actually going to come back in. So we'll watch out for the buyers area. It's a good thing that the lines up within our yellow support and resistance area. So you can clearly see this is where the buyers seem to be pushing up from. So it would be much safer if we can end up getting this price coming to the downside. At least at that point in time, we would have broken this buyers area to the downside. If we can get the pullback and the price holds below, then we should be able to continue looking for selling opportunities here on the British pound against the Japanese yen. But remember, due to the fact that we're so close towards the buyer's area, remember, this price can still continue giving us more of a pullback. So it's not going to be a surprise if the price manages to continue going to the upside. Because remember, as long as we're holding below the red SNR, our bias is going to be looking for selling opportunity. So hope that is clear on all the yen pairs. As you can clearly see, we've mixed and matched the Swiss franc and the yen pairs with all the pairs on the sell side. So right now we're going to move on to the euro pairs and do the same thing. So we'll start off here with the euro against the US dollar. Now, yesterday our bias here was to look for buying opportunities. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out. Now we have adjusted the bottom area slightly because it did seem as if this price was actually breaking this area to the downside. Can't clearly see the way the price is coming down lower, but overall, we will still be looking for buying opportunities. And the reason why we have adjusted it slightly lower, if I do end up going up to a higher time frame, like the 4-hour time frame, I think most of you will be able to see how clear this is in terms of a trending market, where we do have a high right there, pullback that came in, then the buyers managed to push to the upside. So we did manage to break this area above, but you can clearly see this seems to be the pullback within that particular area. You can see the two probes right there. So it's definitely showing you that the price is still, or at least we're still expecting this price to continue going to the upside. And it seems that what was happening was just a pullback. So overall, we will still be looking for buying opportunities here. So the fact that the price has come down, we want to see whether or not we'll end up actually grabbing our buying opportunities within these particular areas. So same areas are still going to be focused on, or at least except the bottom one, but the other two are going to be the same. So right now, it seems as if the buyer is attempting to push to the upside. You can see we're within a small area of sellers. You can clearly see these sellers are the ones who started pushing to the downside. So it's no surprise that the price is struggling within this particular area. So potentially, or at least hopefully, we can end up getting the price coming down a bit lower before we're able to look for the buying opportunity. But there's potential, if the price breaks and falls above here, it could potentially be continuing to go to the upside. But do watch out for this support and resistance area. It's a similar situation. You can clearly see within this location has proved before, but if we are able to get the price breaching this area to the upside and holding above, then we should be able to continue looking for buying opportunities here on the euro against the US dollar. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening. It does seem to be showing some good signs, especially due to the fact that the last time here within this blue support and resistance area, look at how aggressive the sellers push to the downside. But right now, they just don't seem to be reacting within that area. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening. Whether or not this market is attempting to probe to the upside and come back in, we'll wait to see. But if it does hold to the upside, potentially it could continue going up higher. But overall, this is the bias that we do end up having for the euro against the US dollar. We'll just wait to see. So if you do miss your trade here, you can end up waiting for your trade above here, because you can clearly see these sellers also push to the downside. So if you're able to get the price breaching and holding above that area, we will at least be a bit safer to look for that buying opportunity. So hope that is clear as we move on to the next euro pair that we do have. So right here, we have the euro against the Australian dollar. And yesterday, our bias was to look for buying opportunities. It is still the same situation today to look for the buys. You can see earlier in the morning, we did look as if we were attempting to break this area to the upside, but the price managed to come down lower quite aggressively. You can see we managed to get back towards the main buyers area, but the buyers did manage to actually push to the upside. So this trade worked out to around 5 o'clock, so 30 minutes after the New York Stock Exchange did end up opening. But it's a similar situation. We've not really been able to make any new highs above this particular area. So right now, we do still want to look for those buying opportunities. So let me move this blue line. We will still be looking for buying opportunities here. So we focus on the exact same areas that we did have yesterday. But the fact is, if we're looking at the way the sellers reacted within this particular area, or at least reading the story, ideally that's something we do end up teaching within the Afriforex Amplified program, the AMP. So we do end up teaching that within our course, where you can be able to see the story of how the buyers and sellers are reacting. So the last time you can see the way the sellers pushed to the downside, quite aggressively to the downside, quite strong coming down. But if you look at the way the buyers reacted, very, very strong, coming back up all the way up to challenge that particular seller. But now, if you look at the way the seller is reacting, he's much, much slower coming to the downside. So you definitely know that same seller who was there and was willing to sell and give discounts doesn't seem to be willing to give that much of a discount anymore. So it's worth expecting to figure out when the buy is actually going to work out. But overall, we definitely will still be looking for these buying opportunities. So let's wait to see if we are going to get the price coming down a bit lower before we're able to see the buying opportunity coming in. But remember, if you do miss the trade and you find the price already going to the upside, remember there's still an opportunity to look for an entry. You just need to be patient, wait for the price to actually hold above, and don't be fooled, because you can clearly see it's done that multiple times. If we are able to get the price holding to the upside, then we should be able to look for buying opportunities here on the euro against the Australian dollar. So wait to see what ends up happening here, but there could be some potentially nice trades today. So we'll move on to the next euro pair that we do have. So right here, we have the euro against the New Zealand dollar. Yesterday, our bias was to look for buying opportunities, and you can see the buys did work out quite nicely. Initially, price was within an area where the sellers. So remember, we keep on mentioning we do not want to buy within an area where the sellers. So the sellers did end up reacting, especially since it lined up within the market opening time. So you can see from 10 o'clock, once the London market did open, we started getting the pullback coming in. This level did not hold, at least our past support and resistance area, because you can clearly see the price came to the downside and actually held below. You can see multiple confirmations that the price is actually holding to the downside. You can see that was actually 3 o'clock during the US market open. So we started getting more of a pullback. You can clearly see the market give a very nice spike and probe within this particular area, holding to the upside. And that could have ended up giving us a very nice buying opportunity. So this was 30 minutes after the New York Stock Exchange open at around 5 o'clock. You can see the price managed to come up quite aggressive. So it does look similar to the euro against the Australian dollar, where the buyers came up very aggressive, or at least looking at the way the sellers reacted the last time, they came down quite aggressively, but the buyers reacted way more aggressive to come to the upside. And if you're looking at the way the seller is coming down, it's taking a lot longer and coming down a lot slower in comparison to how he did the first time. But overall, we'll still be focusing on the exact same areas, because if we're looking at the market structure, we could potentially be in some sort of range based on the fact that the buyers do seem to be reacting within here. So hopefully we can end up getting this price coming down a bit lower within this buyer's area for us to look for the buys. Because remember, if we are within a range, the best place to look for your buying opportunities will be at the bottom of the range. So let's wait to see when the sellers are going to die out before we're able to look for those buying opportunities. Could end up waiting for a breach and a hold above to actually look for buying opportunities there as well. You can see that's exactly what happened yesterday. Once the price managed to break this area to the upside and we did get confirmation it was holding above, you can see there was another buying opportunity to take the price up towards the next level. So we'll see what ends up happening here on the euro against the New Zealand dollar, but this one seems pretty clear cut. Let's wait to see how far the sellers are going to come down before we're able to look for those buying opportunities. Now, one thing to point out, like Alvin, as I mentioned, I hope you're watching this, but can see following the market structure, at least the sellers who are pushing to the downside, even if this is a pullback and we know we want to buy, we can't just buy just yet, because we know these are the sellers who managed to push to the downside right here. Once they manage to get there, you can see the price can get all the way till that area and the price still came down as long as you're holding below there. So you need to end up following where the sellers are. You can see the next sellers are there. Right now, the sellers do seem to be here. So as you follow that, in order for you to potentially be a bit safer, you could potentially wait for those sellers to be broken to the upside before you're able to look for those trading opportunities. And you can see the same thing happen here. We were following the same story yesterday. Even though the sellers came down very aggressive, when the price came above, you can see there was confirmation that the price actually held above that area and did give another buying opportunity. So do watch out for that if you do want to be a bit more patient. But if you do want more education in terms of how exactly to read the market, feel free to sign up for the AMP course. It should be, I'll ask John to put a link in the video description or at least in the chat box, but you can be able to go to afriforex.com and you should be able to find the link there. So hopefully as we move on to the next euro pair, we do have the euro against Canadian dollar. Now here yesterday, our bias was to look for buying opportunities. Remember, I had pointed out the Canadian dollar did show a bit of strength, especially since due to the fact that they were fighting back. China did end up bringing in a lot of tariffs of their own. So China also fighting back a lot. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening here. But can clearly see the price was not able to actually break this area to the upside. And remember, I had pointed out this blue SNR could potentially give you issues because the market proved there before, it could do it again. And you can see that's exactly what happened. Price looked as if it was going to the upside, but never held above this area. You can see it came to the downside, showed us confirmation it's actually holding below. You can see the price managed to continue coming all the way down towards the main buyers area. You can see the buyers are still holding, and especially if you're looking at the way the sellers are reacting, they do seem to be slowing down. The strength that they had coming to the downside, they had a little more strength. Now on this pullback, you can clearly see the way the sellers are pushing to the downside is not necessarily very convincing, which is a good sign for us as buyers. So overall, we'll still be looking for the buying opportunities, focusing on the same areas that we did have yesterday. Aggressive buyers area right there. You can see we have a problem area right here in the middle. So if you could potentially break that area to the upside and hold above, we should be able to continue looking for buying opportunities. That we should be able to continue looking for buying opportunities within here. So let's wait to see what ends up happening. Hopefully we can end up getting some sort of pullback potentially within here before we're able to see the buying opportunity coming in. But if we do end up missing that buy, we can remember wait for this price to break this area to the upside. And if we do see it holding above, we should be able to continue looking for buying opportunities. But remember, in terms of market structure, we do seem to be in some sort of range. So definitely the best place to look for your buy is at the bottom of the range. Similar situation to what I pointed out yesterday. Since you did notice that we're in a range, best places you can see to look for the buy is at the bottom. So let's hope to see the buyers do end up reacting on this market today. So hope that's clear as we move on to the next and last currency pair that we do have. Right here, we have the euro against the British pound. This pair really did work out quite well. It seems that the British pound was showing a lot of weakness. Remember, I had pointed out that the British pound all across the board, if you look at any other British pound pair, you'll see it did manage to go to the downside. So in this situation, wanted to look for buying opportunities, wanted to see whether or not this breach was actually real. And you can see it was real based on the fact that when the price came to the upside, we got a pullback, and you can see the type of reaction that we were getting within that. The price was not wanting to actually go lower than that. That should have given you confirmation to actually be able to look for buying opportunities there. You can see the price did manage to continue grinding and going higher and higher throughout the London session. Similar situation also during the US session. No real, well, the market wasn't necessarily in a big area, at least at 430 or so, but you can clearly see the market did continue grinding up higher and higher. So today, the bias is still going to be looking for buying opportunities. The fact that we're within an area where the sellers, I think most of you know the story now, do not look for your buying opportunities just yet. So we could end up waiting to see for one of two things could happen. Either this price is going to break this area to the upside, similar to what it did yesterday. So if we can end up getting this price breaking above this particular area, and we see the pullback and the price actually holds above, then we should be able to look for buying opportunities there. But remember, price can still come back in, since we are within an area where the sellers could still see the price coming down a bit lower, potentially coming back within our support and resistance area before we're able to look for those buying opportunities. So in this situation, we wait to see what ends up happening. Remember, there are not necessarily that many fundamentals coming out, but we will still be interested in this because there is a lot of uncertainty especially based on the fact that Trump is very unpredictable, so you don't know what is going to happen today. So hope that's clear on all the currency pairs. As you can see, we've mixed and matched all the pairs on the buy side with the pairs on the sell side. So right now, we're going to have a look at the indices before moving on to gold and silver. Now, I did point out yesterday there was a rumor that was going around that Trump was actually going to postpone the tariffs, or maybe delay them for around 90 days. And there was some positivity in the market. So you can see yesterday on the NAS 100, our bias was to look for selling opportunities. We were within an area where they're biased, so there was no selling opportunity just yet. You can see our illustration, either a breach to the downside or a pullback coming in. Now you can see the pullback side coming in within that particular area. We did get a small push to the downside around 3. So at 4:30 during the New York Stock Exchange, we were back within that bias area. And remember, that's when now they did end up starting to take into account what the rumor was saying, that Trump was actually going to remove these tariffs. But they ended up finding out later on that Trump said that he was not going to do anything with that. It was just a rumor. So you can see the big spike to the upside. Price managed to get all the way back in our main sellers area, but the market did end up rejecting it to the downside. So overall, we are still going to be looking for selling opportunities. If you're looking at the way the buyers are coming up now, in comparison to how they came up before, they definitely are slowing down. We don't necessarily seem to have that much strength because most Wall Street are very pessimistic about what is going to happen. A lot of them are saying there could be a recession. I think Goldman Sachs, that's what they've said. I think they've increased the probability to 60%, but we wait to see what ends up happening here. But for right now, buyers is still going to be looking for sales. Remember, as long as we're holding below this red support and resistance area. So wait to see how far these buyers can actually come in. We want to see them maybe struggling a bit more. Obviously, the higher they go, the better for us because that gives us more opportunity to the downside to get the price coming down low. But remember, since we are pushing to the upside, you're looking at the story of where the buyer is pushing up from. It does seem to be a buyer here who did manage to push up within here. We have a small buyer's area there, but I would not be too convinced to start looking for selling opportunities there because you have this main buyers right there. So I think the best thing to do on this pair, at least I would potentially be doing, is waiting for the price to actually break this area to the downside. If I do see the price holding below, and at that point in time, that will give me more confidence in that trade, and I should be able to look for selling opportunities there on the NAS 100. So we wait to see what ends up happening. Remember, if we break and hold above the red is now, at that point in time, we will get back into being bullish, and we will start looking for buying opportunities there. So hope that is clear as we move on to the next, which is the Dow Jones. So it's a similar story with the Dow Jones, as you can clearly see the story with the NAS 100, where at 4:30, there was a huge spike to the upside. You can see in this situation, this price kept on holding, where the market ended up giving us a very nice probe. Price came back, showing us confirmation of holding to the downside. We ended up attempting to try and come down lower, but you can see the buyers are still pushing up slightly. So overall, our buyers here, similar story with the NAS 100 is still to look for selling opportunities. The buyers seem to be struggling as they're coming up, which is a good sign for us. We just want to know at what point in time the big boy sellers are actually going to come back in. So overall, we wait to see how far these buyers push to the upside, or we could end up seeing the price coming down lower. So remember, if we can see the price coming down lower and it falls below, we should be able to look for selling opportunities there. But remember, right now, since the buyers are pushing to the upside, let's wait to see how far they can get to. Because remember, they can end up getting all the way to this main seller's area before we're able to look for selling opportunities there. So wait to see what ends up happening here on the Dow Jones. But overall, buyers is look for sales, but we wait to see how far the buyers can get to before we do see aggressive sellers coming in. And that could give us some confidence to look for those trading opportunities. But remember also the market opening times, that is 9, 10, 3, and 4:30. Those are the times you do need to watch out for, because you could end up expecting some movement on the charts then. So moving on to the next pair that we do have. So right here we have silver. Now yesterday on silver, our bias was to look for selling opportunities. It is still the same situation today. You can see the three areas that we had pointed out. They're still going to be the same areas that we're going to be looking at today. Still looking for selling opportunities. Not really much happened yesterday on the charts. As you can clearly see, it did end up giving us some reaction within this main seller's area right there. We did get the pullback coming in. The price showed us evidence it was holding to the downside. You can see aggressive sellers. You can see the price gave us another small pullback before attempting to come down. But you can clearly see the buyers who are giving issues were these buyers right here who pushed the market to the upside. As you can see, as I pointed out on a number of pairs where that blue support and resistance area, sometimes you do need to be careful about that particular area or manage your trade within those locations. You can see the trade did work out, ideally only until this particular area, and we do still seem to be holding within that location. So overall, buyers is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. Right now, we do seem to be in some sort of small range, so hopefully we can end up getting this price coming up within this area. Seller's area still seems to be holding. We can end up getting some sort of probe or price action signal. Should be able to look for selling opportunities, but even if you want to target all the way down there, just make sure you do some sort of trade management, either moving your stop loss closer or closing some of your position. And if it is a money, or at least it is able to go through, then you can be able to target within that area or even a bit lower. But we wait to see what ends up happening here. But overall, buyers is still going to be looking for sales. Remember, as long as we're holding below the red SNR. If we break and go above that area, then at that point in time, our buyers will switch and we will start looking for buying opportunities on silver. So wait to see what is happening there. If we move on to the next pair that we do have. So right here we have gold. Now gold, yesterday our bias was to look for selling opportunities. Now initially the price was just within this particular buyer's area. We wanted to see some sort of small pullback coming in, or at least potentially within the support and resistance area. It seems that these small sellers right here were good enough for it, because it seems that that's why the market did end up reacting just before 3 o'clock, before the US market did open. But the fact that we're within this area would have been a bit dangerous. But this being gold, I know the fact that this was definitely a lot of pips. So even if you're trading this range, you would have still made some good money. Now you can see afterwards, the price didn't manage to break this area to the downside. There was a small hold, but I think that was a much smaller time frame. Maybe if you're looking at it on the 3-minute, you will be able to see confirmation that the price actually held below within that area, but it did manage to continue coming down lower. So today, buyers is still going to be looking for selling opportunities. So we're going to change the levels that we did end up having, because the levels have been adjusted. So overall, we're going to be looking for sales as long as we're holding below the red SNR. So right now, we do seem to be pulling back within the SNR that was broken to the downside. And you can see the way the bars are pushing up very nicely and slowly, which is a good sign for us. So the main thing we want to see is what point in time the big boy sellers are actually going to come back in. So maybe if we can get some sort of probe or price action signal within that particular area, we could end up looking for those selling opportunities, or just follow the story of where the buyers are pushing up from. So you can see if the buyers, as they're going up higher and higher and higher, you can end up figuring out at what buyer do you need to wait for that price to break to the downside before you could potentially look for those trading opportunities. So you could end up saying if the blue level is there, you could end up waiting for the price to break to the downside. If it falls below, then you could potentially look for selling opportunities there. That trade could potentially give you less issues in comparison to looking for a trade up there, because technically you're still within a buyer's market. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening here, but overall, buyers is still going to be looking for sales. Want to see whether or not we'll get some aggressive sellers coming in. Remember, if the price ends up breaking and holding above this particular area, then chances are we'll be waiting to see if we can end up getting our selling opportunities a bit higher up before we're able to look for those sales. But remember, gold, silver, the Nasdaq, and the Dow Jones for purely technical, meaning if the price breaks and falls above the red SNR, it doesn't fall off our watch list. We just change our bias in terms of the direction. So that is clear on all the kinds of pairs. As you can see, we've mixed and matched all the pairs on the buy side with the pairs on the sell side. So I want to see if there are any questions on the chat box to address anything. I'm not seeing anything just yet, but just in case someone is typing, you can be able to, here's an example of Afriforex course. You can be able to go to our website, afriforex.com, go to the academy section, and you should be able to find our courses, ideally. So what would offer is the AMP course, so amplified, the Afriforex amplified program, apologies for that. So ideally what this program is, you can see it's a daily trading session. Basically, I know a number of you maybe are alone struggling, because I know trading is a lonely sport. So what we end up doing is we get a group of 5 to 10 people within one class, and we are going to be meeting up every single day for a whole month. So we will be looking for, ideally this would end up happening after the London market opens. So you can see just 30 minutes after this session does end up finishing, we do end up going through a lot of education through the first 2 weeks or so. But then the other 2 weeks, we do end up going through the charts together. So we'll be looking for trading opportunities. So I know we'll end up giving a number of testimonials here, because we have a number of people who, by the time the course, they will finish the course and we finish this program, the MP program, they had already made the money that they had paid for the course and a lot more. So we'll end up getting a few people here to join. But if you are interested, feel free to reach out. You can end up signing up here. You can end up putting up your name and email address. We will give you a call at that time, and we can end up getting at least more details from you as well. But if you are interested, our phone number is in the video description as well. So I guess that's it for me. Not just really seeing any more questions, which is good. Hope everything is well understood. Remember, do trade with caution based on the fact that these markets have become a bit uncertain and there's a lot of volatility, especially based on what Trump is saying and doing. So we do not necessarily know even how other countries are going to be reacting, but do keep an eye out on that. So I guess that's it from me and from us. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. Really do appreciate it. If you did end up liking this session, feel free to like the video. It does end up helping us, our channel, a lot. And I hope to see you guys tomorrow. So happy trading. Cheers. Cheers, guys. Happy trading. God bless and bye for now.